Minimalism didn't fix my life. It forced me to change it. My story started in December 2018. I was living in Zurich, Switzerland, and from the outside, everything looked perfect. I had a dream job in marketing. I had a side hustle as an influencer. I earned good money. I even owned designer bags. But deep inside, something was missing. I felt lost, unhappy, and I struggled with binge eating. And I just kept asking myself, why does a life that looks so good from the outside feel so bad? So I decided to take a break, to step out and to think. I packed my one backpack and went 3 weeks to Thailand. On that trip, I realized something fundamental. This simple life feels just so good to me. I didn't care how I looked. I wore the same outfit every day. I enjoyed the simple things. And for the first time in a very long time, my mind felt quiet. That was the moment when I discovered minimalism. I started to read about it, and I even met people who lived according to minimalist values. And by the end of that journey, one thing was clear to me. I wanted to adapt a minimalist lifestyle. So back home, I thought, minimalism is gonna make my life easier. I just need less stuff. So I started to declutter. While decluttering, I listened to books like Goodbye Things or The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Ups on repeat. I was motivated, and therefore I got rid of about 70% of my belongings. And in the beginning, it felt amazing. Less time cleaning, more clarity, more control. Psychology explains this very well. Decluttering triggers a short-term relief and dopamine because it creates order and a sense of agency. And that's exactly why I felt so good at first after decluttering. But research also shows that this effect is temporary if the underlying structure of your life doesn't match and stays the same. And that's what happened to me. I failed. I rebounced because my job still rewarded consumption. As a beauty editor and influencer back then, I constantly received new products to test. So my bathroom filled up again. And this is not a discipline problem. Consumer psychology shows that possessions are deeply tied to our roles and identity. We use things to perform who we are in a given context. And if this context doesn't change, things can come back. I also had to attend a lot of events. So I started to buy new clothes again. And the stuff came back. But thankfully, I did not give up so quickly on minimalism. I reflected on this vicious cycle of buying and decluttering and realized something crucial. I wasn't failing at minimalism. I just didn't work all the way through yet. Even research shows that sustainable behavior change only works when environment, identity, and the reward system aligns. Otherwise, old patterns can reappear. So I realized, if I want a minimalist lifestyle, I have to change my career. I started to apply to jobs where I knew that it wouldn't be about how I look, but what I can actually do. And additionally, I wanted a remote job. That way, I wouldn't have to be forced anymore to live in one of the most expensive cities in the world. It took me over a year, hundreds of hours, and a lot of tears. But then I finally got a job in marketing in a consulting company. And only then, minimalism finally started to work. Starting this job enabled me to radically reduce my belongings. By the end of 2022, I went quite radically. I decluttered everything I owned into one backpack and even gave up on my apartment. I was ready to start my digital nomad and minimalist lifestyle. And here is how you can learn from my mistakes. If minimalism doesn't stick, it's usually a system problem and not a discipline problem. Decluttering without changing that actual problem can lead to a vicious cycle of decluttering and rebuying. If things keep coming back for you, the question is not why I am so undisciplined, but what in my life demands this consumption. Beginning of 2021, I then finally thought that I had arrived. I traveled. I lived out of a backpack and I owned as little as possible. And at first, that felt like my big dream finally comes true. But then something happened. I lost my identity. Without my stuff, I no longer knew who I was. Extreme minimalism gives clarity, but this clarity can come at a price. It strips you down, and not everyone is ready for what's underneath. Let me explain. Our belongings, they are not neutral. Psychology shows that we often experience them as part of who we are. There is a well-researched concept called the extended self. It explains that people see their possession as an extension of their identity. They store memories, emotions, and life phases. And when those objects disappear, it can feel like you lose parts of yourself. Not because you need this thing, but because it carried meaning. That is why things often act as psychological anchors. Without your favorite kitchen tools, you maybe don't really know what to cook anymore. Without your favorite clothes, you don't really know how to present yourself. And without all your things, you might start to ask yourself, who am I without all of this? But thankfully, research also showed me that this reaction is completely normal. Minimalism is not only a reduction of possessions, it's a reorganization of your whole identity. When external markers disappear, the brain has to rebuild the self-concept from scratch. And this process can feel a little destabilizing, confusing, and even a bit scary. But what I had to learn is this. This loss of identity is not a failure. There's nothing wrong. It is just and only a transition phase. Because defining identity through possession is anyway not a stable foundation. There is two reasons for this. Possessions are a fragile identity source. They can be lost, they can be broken, they can be taken away. And when identity depends on them, the self can become unstable. Secondly, materialism is constantly linked to lower long-term life satisfaction. Studies show that consumption can give you a short-term relief, but not long-term fulfillment. So when identity is tied to things, stress and insecurity can increase. So I had to rebuild my identity differently. I stopped defining myself by what I owned and started to define myself by how I live, my values, relationship, skills, and life experience. That's what I'm all about. But here's the good news. Minimalism gave me something that I never had before: time. So I used it. I started journaling, I practiced Kundalini meditation, I moved my body and nourished it properly. All the things that I never really had time before. And along the way, I even finished my bachelor in marketing, something I could never do before starting this journey. So slowly but steadily, I have built my new identity, one that is built on a stable foundation, where I could kind of lose everything, but still not losing myself. So here is what you can learn from my mistakes. If identity feels lost, minimalism removed the old markers before the new ones were built. This discomfort shows how fragile your old identity that was built on things actually was. Minimalism creates the space and the time to rebuild your identity consciously. October 2024. After 4 years of an extreme minimalist and nomadic lifestyle, my husband and I decided to move together. And for the first time in years, that meant that we had to buy furniture, kitchen stuff, household items. And surprisingly, that really scared me. In my head, I thought that I had to stay an extreme minimalist forever. I thought if I stop being extreme, I will lose it. the calm, the clarity, the control. But this is not what happened. What actually happened is that my minimalist lifestyle transitioned quite smoothly from this nomadic lifestyle to a more settled down version. And psychology explained me why. Research on identity development shows that once values are integrated into your identity, behavior stays consistent even though when life circumstances change. It no longer requires constant effort or strict rules. It simply becomes a natural behavior. Minimalism was no longer something that I had to actively enforce. It was already part of how I live, decide and think. Studies on minimalism and well-being actually shows that the long-term benefits don't come from owning as little as possible. They come from clarity, autonomy and value alignment. That is why this last shift felt so calm instead of chaotic. I do own more things now that I owned in year 3, but I do consume very consciously. I live slower, I live more grounded. My life has changed, but my principles stayed the same. So minimalism adopted to my life and not the other way around. And this was a very important realization. Minimalism is not an identity that you have to protect. It's just a tool that you can use. So the biggest learning from this third phase is this: the best version of minimalism grows with you. It adapts to your life. So when I started this journey, I thought minimalism, it's just gonna fix my life. What it really did was to slow me down enough so that I could finally understand it. And over these 7 years, minimalism has changed its form many times, but each phase gave me exactly what I needed at that specific moment. And that's why I believe minimalism works best when it grows with you instead of limiting you. So if you are somewhere in the beginning or stuck in the middle or questioning your own version of enough, I hope that this video showed you one thing. There is no right way to live a minimalist life. There is only the one that fits you. Thank you so much for spending this time together. I see you guys soon. Bye!